Small Business Development Center at College of Lake County in Grayslake. We're very fortunate to have with us today Frank Brisbois and Nicole Massey-Pratt.
My name is Frank Brisbois, and I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center out at the college. It's a great job for me. It's something that kind of throughout my career just kind of led me there, and it's been fun. So let me ask you, before we really get started today, you'll see this, I've got an interactive assessment. But prior to that, let me see how many folks we have in here that own their own business. Good. Yeah, that's more than normally we get. And of those, do any of you export? Nicole will be speaking about our International Trade Center, and I think from my perspective, that's where our growth is going to be in the next few years. Lake County has a ton of manufacturing and small business organizations that could increase our revenues or could expand their capacity if they're a seasonal business by exporting. So we'll get into that a little later. But before we start anything, you'll see this little page I put on your table here. I use this as a tool for folks that come in that really don't quite know what's wrong with their business, or they don't quite have a good idea of how I could be better. They don't know what areas to focus in. So we call this the 360 screening Get Focused sheet. And if you look right in the middle where it's a little white bullseye, it goes up in squares of 4. So that's percentages, 25, 50, 75, 100. So if you feel, as an example, under your sales and service portion, that you're at 100%, you don't need any help there, you'd fill that all the way to the 100. If you kind of go down there and you say, well, branding, what's that? Maybe 25%. Do I need social media? Do I need an updated business plan? You know, wherever you feel that you could need some help in, that would be a good place for us to sit down and start working with you. So that's what I use this for. So I just wanted to have you all take a minute, if you own a business or even if you're in a business. I threw some of my pens out there and just kind of fill it out so that, you know, you, if nothing else, you can use it for yourself to say, okay, I'm going to go back to the office and I'm going to think about financing, or I'm going to think about expanding, or whatever it happens to be that, you know, you come up with. So that's the interactive portion. Now to get going, before we take up, I want to be mindful of your time, and this is what that sheet that you're looking at looks like. So it's broken out into 4 areas. You got business concept, and then it's color coordinated, so it would be all the yellow. Then we have organizational, red, and it just follows. So, and then if you ever did decide you wanted to come in and learn more, I have manuals that obviously color coordinated as well, and we can sit down and start going from there. So it might be a good learning experience if you're up for it. Now, here's our agenda, and again, I'm trying to be mindful of your time. We've got a pretty good sized slide presentation, so I want to kind of shoot through here, but I thought I'd give you an overview, or not so much trends, but things that you should be looking out for maybe this year in your business, and you're probably already all aware of it if you've been watching the TV at all. You know, it's pretty much the new administration and regulation and that kind of thing. And then when we're at the end, if you want to come and talk to us about the growth wheel, we'd be happy to sit down and talk to you and present the solutions and resources or how we can help you at your 25% level if you're trying to get it up to 50 or 75. So let me quickly introduce myself again and what we do. Pretty much this is our mission statement. You know, we sit down with small business owners, whether you're conceptual or whether you've been in business for less than a year, or maybe you've been in business for 15, 20 years and just need either an assistance with something, example, financing. You don't know what projections are. Steve's going to say, I want to see your financial statements. And you go, well, what's that? You know, it's the cash flow and the projections and the balance sheet. We can help you with that. Everything that we do, if we do work with you folks, it's confidential. Not even the state knows exactly. We don't name companies unless you authorize us to. Because you'll see further in the slide deck, I've got clients that, you know, we kind of do promotional things with them. And, you know, if you look at our spring workshop there, that's my latest client. It's called Fire Guys Tint. They're up in Antioch. It's one of those success stories where they start in the garage and then they work their way up and they're doing real well, and it's a fun company. So we try to do that 2 or 3 times a year. Training is our other workshops, and you'll see them listed in there. And then we typically work with small and medium-sized enterprises. So if you've got over 500 you know, people in your company, you probably don't need to be working with a small business development center. The SBA defines small business as 500 or less. So we're used to working with onesies, twosies, 10, 20, 50. So that's what I would consider a small business. Now, here's the one thing I want you to see and remember and take away. We are grant sponsored from the SBA and the College of Lake County. Kudos to them. They match our grant. That's how I'm funded. So what that means to you folks is, and you probably can't see the slide presentation over here. What that means to you folks is we don't charge for our services. And it's not one of those you get what you pay for. We've got real good advisors. I got 5 different business advisors. They own their own company. You heard Nicole's experience, my background, business banking and finance. So we're pretty good at what we do, and if we can't help you, we'll find a subject matter expert that can. So, no cost. Now, how about our impact? What does America, this is the whole America's SBDC, we're part of that group. There's like 1,000 centers across the country, and I was telling Steve, we're even in Guam in South America. This is what our stats are. New sales, we're in the billions. 100,000 every 7.5 minutes. There's 100,000 worth of sales that can be directly attributed to what we do. New job every 5 minutes. So these are our matrix. These are our milestones. This is what we're in business to do. We're here to help you folks hit some of these things. Now, my personal marketing territory, it's really Lake County, but we go all the way down, Buffalo Grove, I can get into Northern Cook a little bit, but I can't go into Wisconsin. So if any of you folks have businesses there, there's SBDCs in Wisconsin. But here I've been around for 31 years, which most of you probably haven't even heard of us, I'm guessing. We run into that all the time, and we're constantly out in the community. We're constantly doing workshops. Been around 30 years, which is kind of cool. See over 400 people annually and can help, in whatever areas that they're looking for assistance in. So what are trending this year? The regulations are going to be decreasing. The interest rate is still favorable to borrow. Human resources, folks at the businesses that, according to this research that I've done, are looking to hire. They're looking to expand. We're hopeful that it'll all come true. It says 62% of the businesses, are anticipating using more technology. So we're working smarter, not harder, and they're going to either expand or put on more employees. We've got a new SBA administrator who has promised to reduce regulations on the SBA loan side. Her name is Linda McMahon, and yes, it's part of the same McMahon that did the professional wrestling. She's very, very sharp, and she's a really good speaker, so we're looking for good things from her. Now, the National Chamber, which you all belong to, also agree with a lot of the not necessarily deregulation, but reduction of regulation. It turns out if you spend about $12,000 a year as a small business trying to handle all the regulations thrown at you from the federal government. I don't know, I can't verify that, but that's what came out in the survey. So that's the number that's being thrown around. So hopefully you'll be able to save some money with some of these regulation decreases. Interesting fact, the millennials, and I know we have a couple, maybe more, but this is the year, for the first time, they've overtaken the baby boomers in the workplace. And the statistic that I thought was interesting, it caught my eye, is that by the year 2020, millennials will have made up 46% of the entire workforce in this country. So that means, we have to work with the millennials, understand the millennials. They work a little differently. Millennials, obviously, they're a lot more tech savvy than the baby boomers are. They purchase everything online for the most part, and they depend an awful lot on their peer opinions. So if they see a pair of shoes or something they like, they're going to, have you guys seen these? Does anybody buy these? And if they get back, oh yeah, these are great shoes, boom, they'll buy them, and if they have to pay a little bit more, that's fine. So the way we market, the way we retail, there's going to be some changes that everybody needs to be aware of, and I think you probably already are. So, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting statistic. They also asked the millennials during the survey if they knew who Paul Newman was, you know, and the ones that did know said, yeah, he's a salad dressing guy, you know. So I mean, and then I started thinking, you know, that's not so bad, because growing up in the, you know, when I was in the 70s, my folks never heard of the Beatles, and my first boss thought, you know, we were all hippies, and you know, the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket. But we did okay, and I'm sure the millennials will as well. So that's kind of my take on what's happening there. Overall, improving economy, increased revenues, lower taxes, rollback on regulations, cybersecurity. That's huge. Now the 600-pound gorilla in the room, Obamacare. You're all going to be affected by that one way or the other. Nothing has changed yet, but as we know, our fearless leader is bound and determined to replace and repeal, or repeal and replace. So we'll have to wait and keep our eye on that. But no matter what is put into place, it's definitely going to be something to reckon with. So at this point, why don't I have Nicole give her updates on what she feels from an exporting standpoint that your businesses should be watching out.
So hi, I'm Nicole Massey-Pratt, like I was introduced, international trade specialist. So when I was asked to take a look at what was going on in the global economy with the effects of the current administration, it was like, it's so vast. How do I put this into perspective? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a basic general overview, and then I'm going to talk about some key points that even as a business owner who's not exporting, or even as a consumer, it will affect you. What's going on in the international community, because we're so closely tied with what's happening in our own administration. In 2016, the global economy was sluggish, but on the upside, there's going to be a small growth this year. Thankfully, there's a positive outlook for the U.S. In China, it'll continue slowing down, as well as South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia. They'll have the highest growth in 5 years. So things are, on average, there'll be a 30% growth in up till 2021. In terms of globalization, for over 70 years, the global trade policy has been globalization. Well, that's taken a backseat. In 2016, there was so much, I'm so sorry, dissatisfaction in 2016 for the issues that were going on in the globe, that there's now basically a national economic protectionism movement. So basically, they're moving into more protectionist measures, as we've seen here just recently with the new administration. While the US and other EU countries are going to look inwards, China, South America, and India are actually going to continue looking for international opportunities. Now, what that means is that for exporters, is that there's still opportunity there. They probably are going to have to change their markets to be able to find buyers and suppliers as well. So that you're more than welcome to come and see me, and I can help you with that. In terms of cybersecurity, this year, more so than any other year, it's large infrastructures that will be at risk. Small businesses should not ignore this. It happens everywhere and all the time, with or without you knowing it. So if you don't have preventative measures in place, please take the time to actually learn about it and invest in some protection. Oil prices. The OPEC countries and the non-OPEC countries actually came together because the prices were so low, and they came into an agreement that they were going to actually slow down the output by 600,000 barrels a day so that they could actually up the prices. Basically, the shale oil production, this will counterbalance that. Then terrorism as well will be a major concern. U.S. foreign policy, we've seen the protectionist measures that have happened with the withdrawal of from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. NAFTA is going to be renegotiated, as well as also the H-1B visas is a big issue now. If you haven't heard about it, I definitely suggest you take a look at it. With the rise of the U.S. dollar, exports will slow down. But on the upside, with the rise of the U.S. dollar, foreign direct investment is actually going to increase within the United States because the returns are greater. And then finally, just keep an eye on the tripolar tensions that are growing between Russia and the US and China. It's in the news, and that because of protectionist measures, that could become a really relevant issue. And then Brexit and the European populist movement, their elections are up this year, and so you might also see France and Italy and other countries actually follow suit. And that, so finally, how does this apply to you as a consumer? Well, with the protectionist measures, just watch, consumer prices will go up. And as well as for raw materials, if we close our borders. It's not a bad thing. It'll give opportunity for industries within the US. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on to Frank, who's going to do the growth assessment.
It's just there as something for you to kind of nudge you along and say, yeah, it's something I've been thinking about. Now I know where to go if I need to do something. So what are the solutions, resources, and opportunities? Well, here's one of my clients. I thought maybe pictures speak 1,000 words, plus Meg is such a sweetie there. She owns a company called Pigtail Twist, and she came to me originally trying to get a loan, so we worked on her business plan and her financials, and that went well. She does high-end salad dressings and caramel toppings, and she's in Whole Foods and she's in Mariano's. If you get a chance and you want to taste some good stuff, I highly recommend her. So then she came back and said, you know, I'm thinking I need to grow. I need some investors. It's beyond what I can get as a bank. So we went out and we tried to get some investors. That didn't really work that well. She did move on, and she was almost on the Shark Tank. She got clear down to the very end, and then they didn't select her. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And most recently, her passion is cooking. So she wants to have a TV show where she can get out and become the next Julia Child, I guess. But now she's thinking about selling her company. It is profitable. So we've been talking about that. But that's the reason I'm using her as an example is because you can see anywhere on the business cycle, we should be able to help your company. So again, what are the top benefits? We have objective feedback and advice, partnership. We can work with whomever or whatever, whatever opportunities you may have. We're pretty good about judging the industry that you're in, and if we aren't, we'll find somebody who is. Financial insights, if that's what you're looking for. But basically what it does is it saves you time so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time that you're trying to think, okay, I have an issue, how do I fix this? And again, confidential and no cost. So I'm not going to beat you over the head with this. We do have 5 business advisors. 2 of them speak Spanish. They all own their own business or have, so they can walk the walk and talk the talk. So we feel strongly about the educational, the workshops, if you need a QuickBooks or whatever you happen to need. Nicole happens to be wonderful at market research, so if you would like some insight there, feel free. And who do we help? We help just about everybody. Small, medium enterprise businesses, pre-venture, startup, profit-based. The only thing I don't do is not-for-profits. The SBA says, hey, we're a for-profit group here, but I have worked with a few of you. If it's something I can help with, I'm going to. It's not that big of a deal. This is Nicole's client, and I don't know if you want to talk about him or not, but international trade, we help as well.
One of the reasons we work for agencies like the Small Business Development Center is because we're passionate about the people we help. This was a client that came to me in January 2006. He was actually referred by the Department of Economic DCEO, Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And their interest was, they'd been in business since 1985, had never done any exporting, but suddenly they'd gotten a lot of interest, and they didn't know where to take it. In addition, they had purchased, it was Doherty Enterprise, they had purchased Meadow Hill, which was a branch off for keepsake jewelry, and that involves the cremains of an individual and its heartfelt or animals. And so beautiful, beautiful items. And so what they wanted to do is expand their market outside of the US. So they came to us, and we worked with them. They're kind of my tier 2 clients. I have rankings on clients. And what I did was we discussed how they could export, what requirements were needed, and then also I performed the market research to find out what markets they should go into, watching cultural issues because of what they were doing, but also providing them feedback as to the markets that would provide them the greatest growth, as well as
a possibility with very, very minimal risk. So within the year, they actually did what's called a gold key service. We have partners we work with. And what they were able to fly to the Philippines at the end of the year, meet with, I think, 4 qualified buyers. They'd already been vetted. They'd all been checked. And they went and they met at these appointments. And what they did is they've come back now, and they are actually in negotiations with 2 of the companies. It isn't more of a Filipino, it's a hard context culture, so it takes a while, building relationships. This year they were excited about the programs because they also qualified for a grant, an export grant. There is export grants through Illinois, which is amazing because they don't have money. And what they did is now they're excited because they can do 2 more grants, actually 3 more grants this year. They're going to go to Australia, and they want to go to Puerto Rico, but that's a domestic location. And one of the grants, if they do some export market promotional activity, then they'll be able to qualify for it. So it's a nice opportunity, and they're fantastic to work with. So basically, so just to start off, what I'm going to do is quickly cover what's the real impact to Illinois as well as the local community. Then I'm going to follow up with covering what we do and what the benefits of exporting are to small companies. I know most of you aren't involved in exporting, but you might know somebody that is. We have a tremendous network, a tremendous amount of resources that most people don't know about. We handhold our clients all the way through their process, through the life cycle of their business. If they run into problems overseas with compliance, we're there. If they want to find a new market, we can locate it, and we can find buyers overseas. So it's just a great resource. So I can't see. In Illinois, in 2015, Illinois did over $70 billion in international export sales. And that puts them not only 5th in the United States in terms of export sales, but 1st in the Midwest. So we are in a wonderful location to have access to the international community. And Lake County itself did $15 billion. And then in these 2 statistics, I just want to stress the jobs created. The direct jobs, the 210 direct jobs, along with the 33,000 direct jobs, those jobs are just primary from companies who actually export. That's not including all the other additional companies that support their activities. The 5 locations below, hopefully everybody can see, are our primary destinations. So the top benefits of exporting are, some of them are pretty obvious, but there are 3 things you do need if you do go into the export market. You need management commitment because you also need resources. So if you don't have management commitment, the likelihood of resources are probably not there. And then the final is a commitment to exports. It does take a little bit longer to develop an export market, but with e-commerce and automation, that's speeding up rapidly, and we do work with that as well. It's both products and services. So basically what you'll see is a significant increase in sales and profits, gaining global market share. Your consumer, 96% of the consumers and 70% of the world's purchasing power is actually outside of the US. So once you move into the international market, you have access to this. And then selling extra production capacity, that is possible, but also because you have to meet the demands of an international community, you're going to become more effective within your own business. And then gaining useful knowledge, definitely, whether it's technology, whether it's skill sets, whether it's also innovation, companies actually incorporate it into what they're doing, and which makes them much more competitive domestically. And then extending product life cycles. For companies who have produced a product and the life cycle is at its end, if it sells in the US, it most likely sells abroad. So then you can access multiple markets and you can extend that life cycle. And then finally, I think this is the most significant impact to a business. It is actually, it spreads the risk. So we saw the recession in 2009, and many companies were impacted. Well, the International Trade Commission did a research project for 5 years, and what they found was that companies who were exporting to one country or more actually grew by 37%, even though the domestic market was under duress. And then versus versus your domestic companies who are basically at the mercy of what was going on here. They basically declined by 7% or less, and many, as we know, closed. So actually, they call it recession-proofing your company. Following up, what services do we provide? We actually work the gamut, not only from myself, but within our network. And outside of our network, with our partnerships, we shall have a list. We, as Frank said, we do confidential one-on-one consulting. I am very protective of my clients. I have people calling me for information. It's like, no, I'm sorry. And unless they give us permission. The second is the customized market research. So my clients come in, like my Doherty, and they wanted to know where to go. Well, most companies don't have a clue. They've gotten a call from Australia, they've gotten a call from Canada. Let's target those markets. But it's not necessarily those markets that are going to produce the highest return. So I'll do a research project, and what'll come up is the EU. They want to go to the EU or Canada. It's 1 to 2% growth. You look at an emerging market that is safe, and you've got 3,000% because the demand is so high. I've seen as high as 16,000% increase per year because of the demand within that market. So it's a really great way to really target where you're going and you don't wind up wasting time. And cutting edge trade training, we do bring trainers in. This is the one thing we do charge for. Generally, I go to companies and I work with them, and that's just what I do because I like doing that, whether it's documentation or compliance. But when we do bring trainers in, and we do have a flyer for an export compliance workshop. There is a fee. He is actually an international speaker, and so we want to make sure that our clients get the best information possible. Finally, in addition to, those are our 3 core, we do trade lead generation, whether it's I can find a list from an overseas market, domestic, or what we can also do is matchmaking programs. So you find out Australia is a great market. We can actually identify who the buyers are over there, set up appointments so you can meet them. They're vetted, they're ready to go. So, and then finally the grants. I was mentioning the grants. We have 3 grants, 2 grants, but one is given twice. The I-STEP grant, which is the Illinois State Trade Export Promotional Program. It's a grant that's up to $7,500. You can get that twice a year. And then it's for reimbursement. And then Metro Chicago Export, which is part of JP Morgan Chase, they actually set up a fund, and we're actually a test pilot for within 7 counties. Great grant. There's a lot of leeway in order to basically apply up to $5,000 to your export promotional program. So, and then I can't finish my discussion without talking about our partners. We could not do what we do without them. We do a lot of the grassroots work. We get into the market research, but these agencies they assist us. They help our buyers. So what I do want to point out is the U.S. Department of Commerce. That's a federal arm of the International Trade Administration. They're wonderful. They're the ones we work with for a matchmaking program. They're the ones who have offices in over 100 countries around the world. They can go out and vet those buyers. So by the time you get there, they're ready to go. You can trust that generally they'll be reliable. And then as far as Metro Chicago Exports, again, and the Office of Trade and Investments, both excellent. The Office of Trade Investment is through Illinois, and they do provide our grants. And then finally, our local service providers. We work with freight forwarders, lawyers, tax accountants. We don't rely on just what we know. If we don't know the answer, we either refer you or we get the answer from these amazing people that work within the community and are generous to give us the information. So pretty much that's what I do. I love my job and my clients. And so hopefully, I know no one here exports, but if you know someone who could use some of our resources or benefit from some of our services, please don't hesitate to refer them to us. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Frank, and
I think that's about it. I will answer any questions if there are any.